the two topics. And in order to understand how the future is going to look, one of the things that is very important is to know where we are and where we're coming from. So really, really important. So the things that we will be discussing is things like that. Almost 50% of the jobs will be disappearing in a span of 25 years. So the question about the future of architecture is actually the architects, and the architecture will be disappearing as well. And that is a really kind of important topic, because we need to understand how we can survive all the changes that are happening at the moment, okay? But it's also talking about humanizing cities. Everyone can hear me well? The sound is good? From the back, all good? No sleeping over there? No? Good? So, and the other thing that is really, really important is about the city. The city has been and will be the model where people are going to be gathering together. So around 2.5 billion more people will live in cities in 2050. So we are talking about, again, about 25 years span. It will increase enormously the population of humans living in cities. So these are the two biggest questions. Now, in the 5 topics that we will be talking in October, November, December, we will be talking about these things: the future architecture, polycentric city, AI, artificial intelligence and tools, a new typology of scalability. That will be presenting a project that we have designed, but it's also very important, learning from the past. These are going to be some of the topics that we'll be talking in the future, but today is about the humanizing city and the future of architecture. Let us start. So as I said at the beginning, we're not going to show you kind of a lot of projects. This is more collectively a brainstorm to think about the future and the profession. One of the things that is really important is to understand that architecture is a profession of more than 5,000 years. It's practice. It's something that you learn from a mentor. It's something that is really kind of, and we take it very seriously in AEDAS, this kind of transmission of knowledge that cannot be just only kind of an educational institution, but it needs to be as well as a practice. So what is the future of the profession? And this is a question that I ask myself, okay? What is going to happen in my profession? Because when I started to be an architect, it's completely different from what we are doing today. So how the profession will look in 20 years from now? That is a super important question that all of us, I would say, in the room, we should be asking, okay? The second question is the architecture vanishing trade. That means that we are kind of in the lower kind of spectrum of the importance as a profession and the value that we add to the society, because at the end of the day, the professions that we do should be adding value to the society that we live and the urban context that we are. Will be there in architect in 2050. You can see over there, or no, the images? No, you cannot see. Lama, can we move you somewhere? Yeah, maybe, yeah. Sorry for that. Not visible? No? Better? We move? No? Okay, good. Making sure that the content is clear. So let's talk about the future of architecture. Now, when I put things, when we talk about is the architect a vanishing trade, people say, no, how can be, wah, bah, bah. Listen, and we are putting examples of, this is the beginning of the last century. Every single city in the world, most on the West, there were hat makers. These are a shop of hat makers that literally in 20 years, they disappeared completely because the fashion changed. Western people were not wearing any more hats, and therefore they disappeared, they died. So we cannot be 100% sure that these things will not happen to us. Another incredible example is the lift operators. When you watch movies from the past, and I'm talking about kind of the 30s and the 40s, there were always a lady or a gentleman that was on the elevator to press the buttons. That there was a huge collective, even they were in a strike, they were having a union, and they have the right. And they disappear as well, literally, in 20 years, 15 years. So, but it's also because we have always, if any one of you, especially the older generation, will remember smoking on the planes. If I tell you the new generation, actually, there were a time that you were able to smoke on the plane, you will say, no, that is not possible. That because we think that reality is constant, and reality is not constant. It changes all the time. So what we cannot assume that it will not happen the same with architecture and the built environment. So we need to think constantly how we keep and stay relevant? And that is the question that we are trying to respond today. So, to understand as well what we are trying to say, and that can sound very pessimistic, but it's the opposite. It's to really be realistic and to try to add, again, to understand how we can add value to society. This is a very, very brief introduction of what I call the devaluation of the architectural role, okay? And it's a little chapter about how the profession has changed in the last, we can say 500 years, drastically. And here on the left, you have a photo of Master Builder when Filippo Brunelleschi, and this is the cathedral in Santa Maria de' Fiori. We are talking about the 1851 Sir Joseph Paxson for the gardener for the Crystal Palace. This is actually the office of Le Corbusier, and this is what happened in the 80s when the CAD and the new tools of architecture were introduced, the computer-aided design. And it's very kind of quick introduction about how the role of an architect was considered 500 years ago as a master builder. The first time that I remember seeing this picture, this painting, I was asking, who is the architect? Anyone knows who is the architect? And I thought, like, very kind of selfishly, and thinking that the architect were at the center of the world, I thought the architect was him. But it's actually not. The architect is the one kneeling down. This is Brunelleschi. The famous Brunelleschi is actually kneeling down there with the model, the physical model of the Santa Maria de' Fiori, and his helper, the second architect, Ghiberti, but it's actually the one standing is the Medici family, is the banker, is the one who has the access to the most important thing, the purse. And he makes sure that he shows on the painting the purse, because the money is actually the real. He's telling the architect, you see that? Build it there. That kind of, so the architects, they were very important, but even there, they were not such a kind of important that we think. They were able to be the master builder because you do the design and you build. And that was the strength, okay? So then we go, and just doing a very quick summary, sorry for the professor and the deans or whatever, because obviously this is a big topic, but it's just trying to get the points of history that changed everything. That building, and that was for the Universal Exhibition in UK, is extremely important. It's extremely important because it's the first time that the building, actually you don't need to be a master builder. You do the design, and the design can be prefabricated, the design can be replicated, can be copied. The elements are not specific, so therefore the project can be tendered. That is the first time that an architect is removed from the master builder. You do a design and you do a competitive tender. So it's the first time, it's not technically the first time, but it's one of the first times that the design is separated from the construction. And that day, we lose a lot of power as a kind of someone, architect as a profession that can be influenced the present and the future. Then we go to Le Corbusier, things, and I put that photo specifically because Paxson was all the time almost on site, and that relationship with the reality. You were on site, you were able to design, take decisions there, whatsoever. When I put Le Corbusier spent most of his time in his office. Now architecture is removing somehow from reality, from the construction. Remember the painting of Brunelleschi? Brunelleschi was on site with a physical model, Paxson was there. Now from the beginning of the century, architects is started to remove from the reality, from actually the sites. Yeah? And then this is just a reality of kind of yesterday, what the office of architecture looks like. So what's happened, so far so clear? No? Makes sense? Any question? Interrupt. This is kind of for, I would say, 4,000 years, even more, because architecture is one of the oldest professions in the world. The relationship between the owner, the client, and the master was is breaking down, is breaking up. So it was very important. The architect and the master builder, between both of them, they were able to design and construct everything. But because of the Paxson, the project of the Crystal Palace, things started to change. The design was one leg, architecture MEP, and then the construction was completely different. The design was always going to, because of the Industrial Revolution, was able to be giving different kind of prices. You do a design, price it for different contractor, and then the ones that are cheaper or the one that you really can't like it, you can get. So the relationship of forces is completely now asymmetric. Remember one thing, normally a fee of architect is 1/10, even less sometimes, of the construction. So the owner has a much more stronger relationship with the contractor than with the architects. So we are losing some sort of kind of power. That continues from the 1945 to the 80s, when architecture, because of the complexity of the buildings, architecture started to be losing MEP and structure. Remember, before we were able to do everything, but now we are not willing to take MEP and structure. That continues later on, in the middle of the 80s and the beginning of the 90s, the fantastic project manager figure. So now owners perhaps doesn't want to control the architects, or they are not able to control the architects so well, because architects we are very good on ideas, but we are not very good in two things: in program, timing, and kind of budget. And therefore they invented the idea of a project manager to be able to control the architect. So you don't talk anymore to the owner, you talk directly to the project manager. So it's another layer to try to lose the control, or to lose the what I'm saying, the devaluation of the architect. So from MEP and doing structure, now you have absolutely a constellation of consultants that we don't do as an architect. We do the architecture, but there is a urban planning, there is a lighting designer, interior design, facade, kitchen, sustainability, FLS, security, and it goes. I have done projects that I have 25 consultants. So it's absolutely incredible. And the project manager is still there. And the contractor is still doing what they do. They get the design and they build it. So the relationship is still very strong. But what's happening now, and I'm pretty sure whoever is practicing, that BIM and Revit started to tick in the last 10 years, and it's becoming almost the focus and the subject of what we do is BIM, and it's not architecture. It becomes, it's kind of changing completely the way we do things. Why BIM is becoming so important? Because the project manager can understand BIM, can understand budget and time. Sometimes they cannot understand architects, but BIM is a way, it's data, basically, so it's a very easy way to control. So BIM is becoming even more important than architecture, unfortunately. But what is happening as well, because of that super complex constellations of problems and scenarios and conflict and whatsoever, the owners and the contractor are doing something that is called design and build. So why not the contractor gets a design office internally, and they can offer the similar kind of scenario that was that the master builder, the same kind of role that the master builder were able to do. The architect goes now almost inside the contractor. This is the design and build. But it's also, we work a lot of clients nowadays that they have a design studio. So it's almost like we are somehow, and I think you were saying at the beginning of the conversation, we are making ourselves easy to be removed, or we are trying we are not helping ourselves to kind of protect our role in society. And we have that kind of void, or that kind of space that we should have been protected much more, and perhaps engage more with reality. Okay? So from the Brunelleschi time that we were the architects, we were the builder, the product engineer, the material scientist, now we became some sort of the master controller. We are just, apart from designing, controlling all the trades and everything that is happening. So that is a big shift and on the paradigm of what we think an architect does today. And I'm talking to you this way because I think there are solutions. This is not a pessimistic kind of message. There are solutions, but we need to embrace exactly what we do and what we can do in the future. And hopefully we change that kind of roles that we are diminishing. Okay? So the question is why? Why we got there? And I think this is the part that we want to go as well a bit to the past, because one of the things, and I'm almost 50 years old, so not so old, but also have a bit of experience, and I saw the transformation from the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s. Reality is becoming more complex. Regulation is ticking. To build something, for example, in Europe is almost impossible, the amount of regulation that you need to do. So architects are trying to escape from reality. Reality is becoming more complex, and what we are trying to do is to kind of move away from reality, and that is part of the problem. And why is happening that? This is the Babylonian Code of Hammurabi, and this is 2,000 years back. It's very simple, and I would love everyone to read. Yeah, that is something that has been always in the profession. The liability and the insurance that you need to pay for not doing things right is always this idea, and there are hundreds of millions of architects that have been bankrupt because of that. If you break it, you need to pay for it. Okay, that rule is super important. The regulations has been growing, and this is just part of the European Code for construction, where you go the fire safety, the toxic substance, ventilation, sanitation, drainage, combustion. Architecture is becoming such a kind of complex thing that people are trying, and architects even outside, it's all about insurance. One of the things that I spend more time discussing with clients is actually the insurance coverage. What do you need to cover in your insurance policy? Architecture has been becoming very complex, but we have not been rather kind of taking a step forward and say, let's embrace reality. We have been somehow escaping from reality to try to create different universes, parallel, that are not addressing the problems of society. Okay? We have been doing this, and this is a word that I use a lot in the office, is to try to avoid escapism. Escapism is this idea that you try to get distracted because of the unpleasant of the things that are happening. So I think that is something that we really need to kind of focus as a profession, to try to avoid escapism and deal with reality. Artificial intelligence is there, and we will have another session, hopefully number 3 or number 4, talking about tools and AI. But nowadays, it's absolutely incredible. You use it in every single kind of process, but what you can do immediately, in literally 30 seconds, is absolutely incredible. And this is just the beginning. I think we were talking about that, and this is just the beginning. It's just to put few alterations. So we are I think we were very kind of close to. Normally, a typical building takes 9 months to design, from concept design, scheme design, detail design. I think we will be in a scenario that 9 months of an architect doing the building against artificial intelligence to do it in 9 minutes. So that kind of a level of speed we're going to. So how we can add value? How we can learn from the past to add value? And the answer is stay relevant, stay focused, stay on the present, deal with realities and problems that matters to people, stay relevant. How we can stay relevant? So, we discussed the future of architecture. Now, how we can stay relevant for humanizing the city. And humanize is a word that personally I don't like it a lot, because people say humanizing. Humanizing means that you need to design things accordingly to be human. The size of the human, the way we walk, the speed that we walk. So if you are designing, for example, a little room for a lion, you will be taking care of the lion, the measure, how he runs, how aggressive he gets. So what we need to design is places for us, places for humans. We forgot, sometimes because of so much information, we forget that we are humans. We like to eat, we like to walk, we like to be with people, and so on and so forth. It's that simple. We need to design spaces for us. I don't walk super fast. I can do 6 kilometers an hour. So hopefully the shop that I need to buy things is 3 kilometers away, so I can do going and forward. It's just so simple, that kind of concept. So the question that we're trying to respond now, how did the city become dehumanized? Role of an architect in humanizing the city, and did we not have a perfect city at some point in history? When was the deviation from not humanizing cities? So here we go back to, let's say, 3,000 years back. This is ancient Egypt. The capital, Memphis, extremely kind of good. the densities were okay, 200,000 people living there. It really kind of a good model of the city. But then we go also a little bit more, and we go to the ancient Greek, Athens, a little bit more dense, a still good city. You have the live, work, and play in the same place. You don't need to use the car to do anything, and you live in a very good condition. And then ancient Rome. But then, this kind of 3,000 years of tradition of creating good cities or good spaces, there was some sort of kind of earthquake. And there were 3 moments in history that kind of break the kind of tradition of a city. And we need to be very, very aware of that. So we are talking about 5,000 years of good tradition of creating cities, and cities in every single culture, from China, Middle East, Europe. They were even count the Aztecs in South America and so on and so forth. They were really kind of good invention. They were good machines for people to live. They were humanized. We're talking about 10,000 to 25,000 density, people per kilometer square. So good cities. But what happened? The Industrial Revolution. And the Industrial Revolution did something that was fundamental against the way we are living. So now we have people that used to do things moving themselves, now people sitting and operating with a machine for hours. That is what it did to the person, to the individuals, but what it did to the cities to bring the factories inside the city. When you move the cities, the factories to the city, because you need to attract a lot of people to be working, so the cities started to be a nightmare. For something that was really kind of pleasant for so many years, it started to have problems of pollution, problem of the water, problem of crowding. So that was the problem. The Industrial Revolution, bringing the factories, or the dirty factories inside the city, was a real problem. There were these situations for so many people living in small houses. There were the problem with the cholera, sickness, and a lot of people kind of dying because of the quality. You are talking about a city that was 3,000 years old, and now you are putting absolutely all these factories and all that people. There were not solutions to be doing that. So the architects and the urban planning at that time were extremely important, being relevant. We have to offer solutions for planning and regulation. We were able to do things with the running water integrated into the house, the ventilation, the light coming through the houses. So there were real problems that we were able to solve. We became some sort of kind of heroes on that time because we were able to solve problems. The regulation started to take from that is the pre-industrial revolution or during the industrial revolution. They were starting to be called about the amount of light that needs to enter, the ventilation, the shaft. There were even rooms, and that is so typical without no light, no ventilation. So the architects have to work harder to try to respond to all this regulation, and we were able to write part of this code. That was kind of their contribution during the Industrial Revolution. But what's happened, the Industrial Revolution, fine, we solved it, but then around the beginning of the century, the second half of the 19th century, the biggest impact on the city model, the car and electricity. Okay, so we have Edison that invented or steal the ideas from Tesla about the electricity, but he invented the light. The second, so what we are talking about is very important to follow the years, 1879. We are talking about the first of the modern elevator by Otis, 1853. This was the Crystal Palace in New York, not the one in UK, but when he does the demonstration that is incredible about cutting the rope, but the elevator doesn't go down, so it kind of kills the fear of people of falling apart. And then the invention of the car. And this is the first one in 1886. So what we're talking about here, that the light, the car, and the elevator, in a span of 30 years only, they change the tradition of 5,000 years of building cities in only 150. And if we think correctly, perhaps part of the problems that we are facing now today is like these changes has been really recent. It's only 150 years old. So how we are going to deal with these three things? These three things, what they were doing, this disruption on the way we think about cities. And I'm going to explain very simple. That is a beautiful city, from the what we call the 5 kilometer villages, walking city, that has that kind of radius. The moment that was the humanized life, and that is the average 10,000 to 25,000 density. This is Athens, Damascus, Paris, but also Barcelona. Barcelona has 15,000. But then when you have the electricity, one of the things that happens, you don't rest. You have a city that can work 24/7. So that is what electricity, and especially the light, bring to us. But then when the cars, what you can go is 10 times faster, so therefore the city started to lose the density, the consistency. But the elevator, what it is, and you need to consider the cars and the elevator exactly the same kind of problem. One moves on the X and the other one moves on the Y. What it is to increase the density. So therefore, something that was nice, when you added sometimes 7, 8 times more density, it started to lose the humanizing feeling to it. So from that kind of a scenario where we have the horses, then we go to that scenario where we have all the cars. And that happens in 30 years from the invention of the light, the lift, and the cars. So when you needed a space, very little for the horses, for the people, now you need to be accommodating huge amount of cars. So therefore, even the geometry of the city changed, the proportion of the city changed completely. So what you have from the age of the horses to the age of the car, the spaces require much more in infrastructure. But even there, we were able to help to do, especially urban planning, we were able to offer solutions to accommodate the 3 changes into the buildings. That is the Fifth Avenue at the end of the 19th century, and this is how it looks now. And in that kind of 150 years, you can see the intervention of the 3, the light, the cars, and the elevator. This dehumanization, that doesn't respond anymore to the scale of the way we live. Okay? Now, the sprawl is really kind of very interesting thing, because the elevator brought kind of the high density, the cars brought the sprawl. You cannot create city with that kind of density. Where is the city? Where is the communal? Where people are going to be gathering? The city is defined by the need of street. People are going to be interchanging experiences and knowledge. In that environment, these are capsules, private capsules that you live, go in, go out, and you don't interact with your environment or even with the people around. So the problem, and we are talking about Paris, Barcelona, kind of good examples of density, what the elevator did is to increase 7 times the density, but then the car, what it did is to decrease the density. This is kind of the density matrix of how the two aspects of the density are not working as a kind of humanizing. The low densities are not good, the high densities are not good either. So from there to there, and we are forgetting the thing in between. Okay? The third thing that happened is the World War II, and I'm talking about more kind of the Western kind of world, but it's important to understand. After the World War II, there was a huge kind of increase on population worldwide. So now the cities need to accommodate a new type of life. And this is Rotterdam after the Second World War, so there was an idea how we reconstruct a new future and a new hope. Okay? So from the traditional way of living to kind of la unité d'habitation de Le Corbusier, we have to invent a new way of living. That perhaps is not the best way to do cities, by the way, but that is what's happening. And then a new, completely different kind of way of how we live the house, or how the houses are going to be really kind of more humane between what's happened before and what technology can be able to offer. And these are very good because and that only happens after the Second World War, that we have to invent a new way of living. From the cities and the kind of the craziness to the cars, but it's also the other thing that happened after the World War II, and this is the problem of the planning, is this idea of the zoning and the 2D zoning, like this idea that we can be marking with markers or putting with markers different kind of zones without taking in consideration 5,000 years of history of 3-dimensionality urbanism. Okay, so why we use 2D zoning in a 3D world. Okay, so solutions, and this is very briefly, as I said, this is more for thinking, and it's learning from the past. And we think that is super simple. Is you need to have 3D uses, play, work, live together, so you don't need to commute 1 hour and a half to go to work and then come back. You need to be able to have designs that can allow for the three things to happen. We need to have the 15-minute city. You shouldn't be spending so much time. And third one, the street. And the importance of the street is fundamental. If you have, I would say, if you have a street, you have the other two, actually. Okay? From Chicago to come Barcelona is obvious, but it comes from what's happened within Chicago Center and to what's happening in Las Ramblas in Barcelona. And it's super simple. It's the density G+4, G+6, then the frontage that is active, the people walking. Super simple. It's just the street. And the street has been an invention from so many years. This is ancient Egypt. This is ancient Greek. It's what the place that was active. We just need to copy and to try to learn from the past. It's all about creating a street. And the conclusion is basically that. Try to find the problems that are kind of relevant for the time that we live, for the society that we live, and stay relevant. Try not to escape from the reality that sometimes is absolutely difficult, but that is important. Industrial revolution, the car, the three events that destroy somehow the ideas of the city, on the humanizing of the cities, and resolve problems, adding value to society. Don't escape reality, stay relevant. That will be the message for today. That's all. Thank you.